welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Thanks, Chris. Good to be with you.
What do you hope to achieve over this next week in Tampa?
Well, I'd like people to stand back and say, what are the big issues that America faces? And what are the answers that I have and that Paul Ryan has for the issues that we face? And I believe that if people stand back and consider all that America has to deal with going forward, they'll recognize that we're the only team that has answers for these challenges. And they're big and bold answers. America needs that kind of help at a time when so many people are out of work or underemployed or having a hard time making ends meet.
If voters take away one thing from your big acceptance speech on Thursday night, what do you want that to be?
That I believe in America and in the American people. That I believe that this nation is unique and exceptional, and that we have everything we need to continue to lead the world in prosperity and in peace.
In the wake of Congressman Todd Akin's comments last Sunday, the Obama campaign is once again attacking Republicans for what they call the so-called war on women. Now, I know that you have an economic argument about jobs and opportunity, but I'd like you to deal with the social issues aspect of this specifically. How do you answer the Obama charge that they offer more support, more choice to women when it comes to abortion or rape or birth control or women's health care?
Well, first of all, with regards to women's health care, look, I'm the guy that was able to get health care for all of the women and men in my state. They're just talking about it at the federal level. We actually did something, and we did it without cutting Medicare and without raising taxes, number one. Number two...
So you're saying look at Romney Care?
Well, I'm very proud of what we did, and the fact that we helped women and men and children in our state. Number two, and we did it without cutting Medicare, which obviously affects a lot of women. The way the president cut Medicare, $716 billion for current retirees, that's a real problem. And then with regards to contraceptives, of course, Republicans, and myself in particular, recognize that people should have a right to use contraceptives. There's absolutely no validity whatsoever to the Obama effort to try and bring that up. And with regards to the issue of abortion, that is something where men and women have alternative views on that, or different views. We look at an issue like that with great seriousness and sobriety, and recognize that different people have reached different conclusions, but it's not just men who think one way. Women also, in many cases, are pro-life. There are two lives at stake: the child, the unborn child, and the mom, and I care for both of them.
But according to the polls, there is a gender gap. You lead the president among men, he leads you among women. Specifically, how much do you think Congressman Akin's remark about, quote, legitimate rape hurts you?
Oh, I think it was a terrible statement on his part. I think it was uninformed. I think it was outrageous and offensive. I've asked him to get out of the race. I think I have distanced myself from the kind of thing he said as far as I possibly can. He was wrong. And it obviously is being used by Democrats to try and cast a shadow on our entire party, and it's not. It's the leaders of our party have pretty much unanimously said, you know, Mr. Akin, get out of the race. You've said something which is highly offensive.
The Democrats are running some ads right now. It looks like your campaign logo, except it's Romney, Ryan, Akin.
Well, it really is sad, isn't it? With all the issues that America faces, for the Obama campaign to continue to stoop to such a low level, they understand, and they're wise enough to understand that people like myself who've asked Todd Akin to get out of the race are doing so because we vehemently disagree with what he said, and believe it hurts our party, and I think is damaging to women.
Let's run through a few issues. You say the president is raiding Medicare and that you would restore the $716 billion that he takes out of Medicare to pay for Obamacare. But the Medicare trustees say if you do that, that part of Medicare, the hospital trust fund, starts to run out of money in 2016 instead of 2024. Now, your big reform, the premium support, doesn't kick in for another decade, so how would you keep Medicare solvent when it starts to run out of money in just 4 years?
Well, I'm replacing Obamacare, and so the things I will replace Obamacare with will also help hold down the cost of health care, keep it from growing at the massive rate it's been growing. So I'm not just getting rid of Obamacare, I'm replacing it. And one thing's for sure, cutting Medicare for current seniors by $716 billion is not being done to save Medicare, it's being done to pay for Obamacare. And restoring that money to Medicare does not make it less solvent, it makes it more solvent.
But can you give a couple of examples of the specific things you would do between 2013 and 16 to help keep the hospital trust fund solvent?
Those 3 years?
Those 4 years.
Okay, for the 4 years, specifically what's going to happen in those 4 years?
Yeah.
Well, you're asking for my plan for health care, and it indicates a whole series of things. One is to have individuals be able to purchase their own insurance and do so on a tax-advantage basis. Two is to make sure that we protect...
But I'm talking about Medicare.
Well, but if you take action that helps bring down the cost of health care, slow down health inflation, that also helps Medicare. But one thing's for sure, putting money back into Medicare helps it, it doesn't hurt it.
You accuse the president of running an angry and desperate campaign. You've even used the phrase a campaign of hate. The president this week said, look, I pointed out the differences between us on policy. Where do you see a campaign of hate?
Well, when the president accuses me of being a felon, or when his staff does, and he doesn't distance from that, when they have a PAC which says that I'm responsible for someone's death, and he won't distance himself from that, why I would suggest that that's a campaign of anger and divisiveness. I think his whole campaign has been about dividing the American people. It's between the haves and the have-nots, the people of one location versus another. This is one street versus another street. That's the kind of divisiveness that I think Americans recognize, and I think it's one of the reasons why his campaign, despite spending massively more than our campaign, that his campaign hasn't gained the traction that he would have expected. I think people have seen this kind of a character assassination and divisiveness as being very different than the campaign of hope and change which he ran on originally.
You talk about spending. The Romney and Obama campaigns together so far have spent over $500 million, and that doesn't even include any of the outside groups, any of the super PACs. When I was talking with Mrs. Romney the other day, she said that if you're elected, you would like to begin to get some of this huge amount of money, some would say obscene amounts of money, back out of politics, and would consider accepting federal matching funds in 4 years. Is that true?
Oh, absolutely. This president, when he was candidate, Obama, last time, was the first post-Watergate candidate for president who said he was going to push aside the federal spending limits and spend an unlimited amount based on what he could raise. And to be competitive, we obviously are following suit. But I would far rather have a setting where we had both agreed to the federal spending limits. Look, what he's done has meant that both of us have to spend an inordinate amount of time fundraising. We can't spend as much time on the campaign trail. And frankly, it increases the potential of money having influence in politics. It's really, I think, an outrageous decision on his part. And remarkably to me, the more liberal voices that have been fighting for campaign finance reform for decades had almost nothing to say when their candidate was the one who blew up the campaign finance achievements that have been made over the past decade or so.
You have taken a lot of heat about tax returns, and I want to ask you one specific question about that. You've been running for president for almost 8 years, and the question is, why didn't you years ago, somewhere over the last 8 years, go to the people running your blind trust and say to them, let's get out of the Swiss bank accounts, let's get out of the investments in the Cayman Islands, even if it means we have to pay more taxes so we can clear the decks politically?
Well, first of all, there was no reduction, not $1 reduction in taxes by virtue of having an account in Switzerland or a Cayman Islands investment. The dollars of taxes remained exactly the same. There was no tax savings at all, and the conduct of the trustee in making investments was entirely consistent with U.S. law, and all the taxes paid were those legally owed, and there was no tax savings by virtue of those entities.
But why not just go to him a long time ago and say, get out of these things, because you know...
Don't invest in anything outside the United States. I don't know whether a trust... I mean, I could have said, don't make any investments in any foreign companies, in any foreign bonds, in any foreign currency, only U.S. entities. And by the way, don't buy any foreign products, don't have any Japanese TVs or foreign cars. I mean, yeah, I could have done that, but, you know, I did live my life, and I expect that by virtue of disclosing all these things, people can take a look at it and see whether that's something they're comfortable with or not. I'm not going to try and hide who I am and try and manipulate my life to try and avoid the truth.
So what do you make of this talk? I can't say it's all this talk, but there is certainly some about the Cayman Islands and the Swiss bank account.
Well, I understand that's what the Democrats and the Obama people will do. Again, campaign is not about the big issues that America faces. Their campaign is not about the fact that you have 23 million people out of work and half the kids coming out of college can't find work. Their campaign is trying to find something to say, gee, he had a Swiss bank account, which apparently was done by the blind trustee. I mean, I had no involvement in this, but the blind trust said, oh, we're going to have some currencies, in U.S. currency and some in foreign currency. That tends to be something which investors do, but they're trying to make that seem like it's some unsavory action, and frankly, all the taxes are paid exactly as owed, and there was no tax savings by virtue of having that vehicle.
Finally, you are about to become the Republican nominee for president. One step away from the Oval Office. Your beloved father, George Romney, tried for this, didn't make it. You have tried for 8 years. I want to ask you on a personal basis, not political, but personal. How do you feel? What are your thoughts as you take a very, very big step?
Chris, you may find this hard to believe, but this for me is not at all about me or about what this means for me or what it means for our family. I mean, this is not an ego ride for me. I'm really concerned about America. And I think this president is weakening America in very fundamental ways. And a lot of people are suffering for it now. And that over the coming decade, the decisions he's making will cause a lot more people to suffer. And I look at this as a responsibility and a privilege. It's an honor to be the nominee of my party. But this is about an opportunity to get America on track again. And that's what I'm thinking about. Can I win this thing? Can I be successful in replacing President Obama? If I can, I want to make sure that we get the country back on track. So for me, I'm focused on not letting down the millions of people, it's literally millions now, who've endorsed my effort, who sent checks in to help me campaign. I feel an enormous responsibility. I don't feel ebullient with aren't I great for having got this? I feel like, wow, a lot of people are counting on me. They're hoping I'll be able to win, and I'll be able to get America on track again.
All right, I'm going to take one last swing at the personal side of this, though, and I take your point. Have you been thinking a lot about your dad recently, and what would he say?
I always think about my dad, and my mom for that matter. I think a lot about them, and I'm drafting a convention speech and thinking about the kinds of things my dad would say if he had the chance to offer that speech. And I think like most guys who've lost their mom and dad, we think about them a lot. I think about them when I pray. I think about them in the daytime.
And what do you think he would say about you having taken this step that he was unable to in being the Republican nominee?
He gave some advice to the new governor of Michigan, John Engler, years ago, and I've heard him give it to many people, which is be bold. Don't worry about what people think. Just be bold. Get the job done. That's the advice he'd give me.
Governor, thank you, and have a good week in Tampa.
Thanks, Chris.